Hello everyone, welcome to Zaref Game Dev. In the previous part, we see how we can create different types of scripts using inheritance, where we had a base class and then derived classes which use the same methods. Now we are going to create a simple interactable scene where it is going to have a similar interactable class and the derived classes for interacting. So forward. Hmm. Let's go inside Unity and let's create our scene, which is going to be a lesson 9 project. Save. And for our project, we are going to have all the scripts. So the first script we are going to need is a player interaction script. And we are going to need a player movement script. Next, we are also going to need all three of our interactable scripts. So the first one is our base interactable class. Interactable. Then we are going to have the two derived classes. The first one is a door. And next we are going to have a healing station. So now let's create those scripts inside Unity. So as you can see, the naming are pretty straightforward. Now let's go inside Visual Studio and we'll start with the simplest script first. So let's start with the player controller project, player movement. And let's have the namespace lesson 9 project. Let's So inside the player movement, we need a method to move the player. So inside the update, we are going to get public float speed, horizontal and vertical. But instead of let's also create a rotate speed. So public float rotate speed is going to be 180 and for the horizontal, which are the AD keys, transform dot translate instead of movement speed time dot delta time, we are going to have v3 dot forward into vertical input. Mm, Move vertical multiplied by transform dot forward and move horizontal multiplied by transform dot right, and we are going to move movement into move speed. So normalized, and that should take care of the player movement. And we could have also done the rotate depending. It is not going to strafe. Transform or rotate. Zero move horizontal multiplied by rotate speed. Up multiplied by horizontal multiplied by rotate speed. I mean, both of them are similar. So that should be for the player movement. And let's try the player interaction. Inside the player interaction, what we are going to test is whenever we press a key, we are going to create a raycast to the forward direction and check if we can get an interactable. So let's create a public float interacting range to be 3f. And public key code interaction key to be E. And inside the E, instead of firing the key code, we'll check if we are pressing the interaction key. Then we are going to create a try interact. And inside the try interact, if we are hitting interactable instead of interactable, let's call it base interactable. And interactable dot interact this dot game object else debug.log and also debug.log. And if we are not interacting anything, then nothing to interact. And inside our base interactable class, we'll need to create this interact method with a game object passing. And to test how it is going to look inside Unity, let's create a on-dog gizmos selected. Color.yellow, draw rate, transform.forward, interaction range. Also gizmo raw wire sphere. So that should take care of the interaction. Now let's go inside our base interaction class. For the base interactable class, and we'll need to create a public virtual void so we can override it and the interactable method. So let's create a serialized field for protected string interaction prompt. Serialized field protected bool is interactable. And if we cannot interact, then we are going to debug.log its name. Else will debug.log the base interact. And also For the door, we can public void set interactable, and we can also pass the boolean value and void is interactable is equals to value, and we'll use the debug.log. So our door, once it is open, we are not going to interact with again. And similarly, the healing station, it is again going to have some interactable, non-interactable setup when it is on cooldown. So let's start with the door as it is the simplest. So for the door, let's put it inside the namespace. And it is going to be inherited from the page interactable. And let's create a private bool is open is equal to false. And serialized field private vector 3 position offset, and we are just going to move it to the up, and private vector 3 for the closed position, and inside the awake we'll set the closed position is equals to transform.position, and the object name, what did I name it? Interaction prompt. Interaction prompt is going to be open door. Okay, we are not going to change anything. It is just going to open and close. But so instead of the interaction prompt, we are going to have object name. Object name is going to be door, and public override of void can interact. Then will interact. If it is not interactable, then we'll use not interact. Then call the base.interact the interactor, or here we can just directly call it player. And we'll toggle the state. So why does so is open is equal to not is open, and the transform.position is going to be equal to that, and we'll debug.log open or closed, and if it is not interactable, then it is going to be locked. Okay, so that was it for the interact. Now, similarly, we are going to need the healing station. So healing station is going to heal the player. Currently, it is not doing anything, but for the healing station, we need to heal the player. So we are going to need one more script, which is the player health. Regainable interaction. Okay. Let's create the player health script. Let's find the correct namespace. So let's go inside Visual Studio and let's create the player health. So our player health is going to need the variables related towards health, the maximum health, and a method to heal the player. So let's create a public int for the max health, public int for the current health, which is going to, let's start it at 0, and public void heal, so the player can heal, and pass the int amount, and current health plus is equals to amount max health, and we use debug.log, the player is healed. Now in our healing station, whenever the player interacts with the healing station, so it needs to from the base interactable, and first we are going to have a public int heal amount, then public float cooldown time, then private float uh, next available time. So when we are going to use next, and by default will start at 0, and inside the awake we'll just set the object name healing station, and inside the public override void interact, we are first going to call the base.interact, and before calling base.interact we are going to check if we cannot interact is interactable or time.time, then we'll use the debug.log, then we'll get the player health component, and if player health is not equal to null, player health is equal to null, does not have a player health component, and similarly we will set the player health dot heal next available time will debug.log, and set interactable equal to false, and we need to invoke name of reset interactable after cooldown time. Is not interactable at the current moment, cannot be used right now. I mean, okay, we can use different debug.logs. Cannot be used right now, is on cooldown. So if we cannot interact, if time cooling down, please wait for okay. So both of this is done, does not have a player health component, and we need to create the generate method. Inside the reset interactable, we just debug.log, and it should set the interactable again. So that was it for the scripting part. Now we'll need to test it inside Unity. So first we are going to need a player, and the player is going to have a mesh filter, and it is going to be a cube. Then we are going to have a mesh renderer, which set it up to a player, and also a box collider, and finally a rigid body. And not use gravity, freeze, and X and Z. So let's see how the player is going to move. Player Z movement doesn't affect Y. But where is its forward? I'll need to test it. Let's create the UI, and not the UI, the light. Let's add a directional light. And first we are going to catch our player health, as it is the simplest, the player movement, and the player interaction. So interaction range is 3. So let's set play, and let's see what we can do with our player. So if I press W, it is moving in the Z direction. Okay, so everything is moving correctly. Why does it also has the gizmo? But it is only available here. So first, I need to realign the player. So now we should be able to move the player in a specific direction. And to see if the player is moving correctly or not, let's duplicate the player. And let's remove the rest of the scripts. Also the box collider and the rigid body. And let's decrease its size to 0.4. And we'll position it inside the Z. So it can be used as the player's forward direction. And let's make it dark blue or yellow, so we can know which one is the forward direction. And let's parent it to the player. Okay, so we will move this forward. Let's see if our forward is the desired forward for here. Player. Okay, so it is the correct forward in the Z direction. As you can see, it can detect anything here. So first, let's detect our door. And to test the door to be working, we are going to have it move in the Y direction. So let's create an empty. Let's call it door, and it is going to need import the mesh filter and mesh renderer. Let's make it yellow. Let's have a cube. And by default, it is here. We are going to need to increase the Y. Let's make it 5 to 0.5. So this is going to be our door. And instead of 5, let's just make it 4. X4, Y1. And we'll also need to attach the box collider. And needs to be a trigger. And also the door script. And inside the door, the object name is interactable position offset. Everything is set correctly, and to need to see it working, you need to transform the camera to be perspective. Okay, so how we are currently viewing from the top, like here. Let's see how does this work currently right now. Okay, so the door has been opened. As you can see, it moved upwards, and we cannot interact with it again. And similarly, let's duplicate the door. And instead of having to, we are going to move it in the -4 direction. And instead of the door, we are going to attach the healing station. So the healing amount is 20. The cooldown time is 5 seconds. And let's call it healing station. Now let's see if we can interact with the healing station and test. So let's move left and okay, so let's press E. So player healed. Healing station interactable set to true. Player heal. Interacting with healing station. Healing station is not interactable at the moment. Healing station interactable set to true. Okay, not interactable. So healing station is only not interactable when the time is less. So I'll just delete the non-interaction script. Now let's hit play, and we should be able to see how much time is remaining when we interact with it again. E. Please wait for 2.2 seconds. Set to true. Player healed for 20 health. Current health 40. Please wait for 2 seconds. And now the player should be healed to 60. So that was it for the project.